This is your daily market review for Tuesday, February 18th, 2025. Let's go.
Hey everyone, this is my channel to help investors and traders develop a probability-based mindset to succeed. Also try and keep friends informed of what's going on in the markets and the economy, and also a little real estate content as well.
This is Dan Max at eXp Realty, aka The Trading Agent, your daily market review for Tuesday, February 18th, 2025. Hopefully you're doing well. Interesting start to the week. Got a nice little bounce. Choppy action for the most part all day, but however, we did close at new all-time highs. Talked about if you have trades, manage your positions, know your levels, make sure you execute on your trades and strategies. I still feel like it's a trader's market based on the way the VIX and looks like interest rates are acting, but however, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't set traps. A lot of people don't really understand traps, which I get, because it's hard to know you're in them until you learn how to handle them, deal with them, and live through them essentially. But again, let's talk about the data, because some stocks are acting better than others, some aren't. And again, overall, the market, again, it's a subject to interpretation. It's a probability game. You can do what you think is best, ultimately. And that's the key here. And my best advice for you and everyone following is, hey, let's see what we can do. Let's make the best of what we got. Because again, I think seasonality-wise, as I talked about, if you have the Stock Traders Almanac, this week is options expiration. Usually have a pop to start the week, and then it looks more bearish, as we've talked about, mid to late February. Again, go study the notes. I have them in the reference articles, back to basics, tons of this stuff, education. It's all in the Discord room, so if you're new, want to check it out, link in the description below. Appreciate all the love, support, generous donations. If you want to get involved, want to chat, use the Calendly link. Follow on, posted a ton of stuff on Twitter today and trades as well, trying to keep people informed of what's going on. Also, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you want to hit the thanks, I appreciate it. Or if you want to donate, link in the description below. And also to tradingagent.com. Tons of stuff on here, constantly updating it. Again, if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out, whether it's you're looking to buy, sell, invest in real estate, need some help with that, you're looking to up your game in trading, you're looking to understand more about how to get better at trading. Again, tons of assets, resources. So let's get into it. We know the Fed Watch tool coming up in the March meeting. There's nothing at this point. There's nothing really expected till potentially the end of the year. Potentially. So just be careful out there, right? I'm not sad to say that we can't get one beforehand, but again, study the odds, pay attention, use this link to follow. Again, it's kind of a beast one, but it's one that I like to follow, because again, I don't think there's going to be anything at this moment until we get some sort of pullback in the market. Just keep that in mind, right? There's nothing really at this point to expect cuts. We need inflation to come down. Bitcoin seems to be chopping around. It's holding, which again, I'm not going to sit here and say it can't. We've talked about this, and you've seen this before, where you get a chop range and you break below the range lows to trap out. Again, if you're long this stuff, be careful. That's all I can say. I don't know what to tell you. Again, everyone's talking about crypto as the future, but it seems like the auditing of gold combination probably would make sense, right? Because gold and Bitcoin have different purposes, different uses, and ultimately one's more based on technology. One is old school rock. Let's just call it what it is. So keep an eye on it. Oil, we talked about this one chopping around. Again, I think ultimately you're going to retest range lows. Demand destruction is a real thing. Natty gas, as we talked about, I'd love to see it back in the ones and twos if we get it. If we don't, you don't get it. Dollar, we talked about this after XDiv seems to be making lower lows. I'd be watching, near term. This one's tough. Expect the 200-day, expect the dollar to pull back a little bit. There's so much going on. That's where I'm just watching it, right? If you think about all the trade deals, you see what's going on in Europe, Ukraine, Russia, Japan, Canada. It feels like there is a demand for the dollar, but ultimately, again, it's like it's a race to the bottom, in my opinion. All the currencies they've got to get their houses in order. TLT said watch the 20-day. I do not like this close, but the volume is kind of crap. We talked about this. This is the hardest thing about bonds. Sometimes they get really choppy, right, before a big move. And sometimes they get just dumped out. At this point, if you are long bonds, just set your stops. Don't watch it. Don't overthink it. If it holds, it's good. If it doesn't, you got to run. You just got to take the profits, the VIX, or set your stops. We talked about this. It feels like this is a good level to watch and wake up. We talk about the VIX typically bottoms first. It seems to be there. So keep an eye on it. Again, I mean, it's a holiday week. This is where it gets really tricky. And not to get on a soapbox acting like we know anything for sure, but if you've traded long enough, you know that these weeks, options expiration, end of February, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw a directional movement part of the week and then the next part being the other direction. Meaning if we're up to start the week, do we pull back later in the week? That would make sense. SPY breaking out. These candles, again, don't really confirm much on very light volume. It's just worth watching. QQQ hit 540 today, right on the daughter. But damn, a doji on light volume. Like these things, and again, let's just leave an arrow here, come back to it. Typically, man, they're near short-term bottoms, tops. That makes sense when these formations find up like 3 Mile Island, where you get the blow-off, you get the doji. Again, see what happens following next, the next direction being what happens tomorrow. Keep an eye on it. IWM chopping around. Keep an eye on this. Again, I mean, I know some people taking shorts on this. I personally think if you're going to short in any index, this one would make sense with tight stops. I mean, obviously, 230 would be your stop zone, but all these moving averages come together. Keep an eye on it because, again, the IWM should be leading up. It's not really giving any data at this point. DIA seems to be chopping around, not really paying attention to it as much as some of the other names. Gold. This is where it gets interesting, right? Now, all these headlines of gold. Now, again, take the preface with this. Again, if you traded long enough, you understand buy the rumor, sell the news. I'm not saying that necessarily gold is going to dump, but if it got sideways in our chop zone or is consolidating, that would be natural too, but you have to watch this level. This is the 2 times range on the monthly. Here, I'll just stop and show you my monthly. Talked about this target all the way back in 2018. When we talked about this as a big cup and handle, we talked about the chop, and here you go. Now you're up there. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to just melt down. It's just I wouldn't be surprised if we got a little bit of consolidation chop up here. And if we don't, then that shows you how strong this stuff really is. Again, I'm sorry, Bitcoin and crypto bros and hoes. Again, I'm not saying that long term. I don't know. I really don't know who wins. I mean, Bitcoin seems like one of the most safest ones, but gold is back. Silver gets interesting. We talked about Friday's action being an absolute question mark. Like, could this be a trap? Here we go. We opened the mid 29s. We closed near the highs. Okay. Again, just you need more follow through. That's all I can really say there. GDX. We talked about the miners, right? That Friday action, not great. Today's action, not really giving you too much. Just keep an eye on it, right? Because again, this is the thing. What's so hard is miners can get slammed if the market gets crushed, and if the market holds up, it chops around, and gold continues to build. Miners can, like silver, can build. This could all keep cruising slightly higher. Again, you just don't want to see a VIX expansion, because then I think the miners will get crushed. Again, if there becomes credit issues and liquidity issues, they're part of the market. AEM. Been holding up pretty well. This candle today doesn't really look that bad. It looks like an inside day. Keep an eye on it. AG earnings coming up. Keep an eye on it, chopping around. Remember, this is like the last week of earnings as well, so worth a watch. Newmont. Here's where it gets a little, interesting. We talk about 3-day ranges. Keep an eye on this one. Not to say that it can't go higher in time. We talked about the bottom in the mid 30s. The stock should be in the 70 or 80 range. It's weird that it's not, but just keep an eye on it. PAAS holding up near the highs. Again, we like gold and silver long term. If you give me you have to put a gun to my head and you ask me what I think gold, silver, the miners will be a year from now, I think they'll be much higher. Near term, that's a little harder. All right, let's get into Tecker. Taiwan Semi. Again, chopping at the highs. 50-day seems to be resistance, multi-day range there, and gap. I'd be watching 205. You can get over it. Cool. Micron got a nice bounce today. Again, it looks like there's some idea that the government is going to bail out certain chip names, manufacturing, whatever you want to call it in the U.S. We've talked about this was always possible. Do I think this changes the premise? No. If anything, adding more supply and subsidizing is going to hurt overall chips, in my opinion, long term. Because again, you're going to have a glut of supply. Ten cuidado. AMD, this one seems to be, we've talked about this one being oversold. Not to say, that it can't go lower. But look at this thing, right? It's just trending lower. And this is where we're saying, do you really want to continue to press your short, or do you just let it bounce and see what happens here? Personally, again, that's why we trade around positions. NVIDIA was going nuts today watching it, going, oh my God, we filled the gap. Holy shit. Like, I mean, look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 days right back up. Fill the gap. Watch the blue zone. Easy pie area to short. Keep an eye on it. SMCI, this is where it gets interesting, right? Like, holy shit. We talked about if you could get over 45. Look at today's gap. It just kept going. Now, what's the proper price for this thing, right? What's the next like area to watch? It definitely looks like there's a trend line coming into play that got broken. Now what? I mean, your guess is as good as mine, maybe. I mean, man, damn, do we fill this gap, get into the 60s? This is what's hard. Tricky little bastard, right? I mean, counting issues, we'll see. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say anything at this point other than be careful. Just be careful. Manage the position. I mean, unless you know something I don't, leave a comment below. I appreciate it. Intellectual property, we talked about this would be a buyout potential, like getting the bailout, buyout. Okay, seeing some new details. Again, this is where you have to admit you're wrong, eat crow. And again, I wouldn't say I necessarily have to eat complete crow because we talked about if you wanted to buy this at 18, 19, it felt safe, right? Like, I mean, I still don't really think there's much in terms of like what's going to happen. If it got bought out, I don't think it would be a premium, meaning like much from here. But again, if the government's going to subsidize them, try to give them some free cash, try to make things happen. Again, you broke the downtrend. You held support. What's the next upside now? Shit. I don't know. Why not fill the gap at 29s? Again, I'm not going to sit here and go short this thing. I can make fun of this for years and say, well, there's going to be a time where you don't short it, right? Or there's a time where you just, let it go, right? Just keep an eye on it. I think at this point, yeah, I mean, here's the thing, right? If you bought this at the lows, set your stop at your entries. And if you want to take some profits as it rises, go right ahead. AVGO, here's one that's a little interesting to me, right? Keep an eye on this one, watching how it acts in the 230s, upper 230s. SMH, Doji today, back up, or not Doji, sorry, popped. It's like a small candle. I was looking at something else, sorry. We'll see what happens from here. Man, these volumes on these rises are just absolute dog shit. Like, go look at this, like red candle versus green candle. Like green candles, lighter volume. Red candles, heavier volume. Keep an eye on it. Adobe. We talked about this as holding the 20-day when it curled up. Interesting action. Hit the 50, backed up. Feels like that 100-day is coming. Apple, applesauce, apple fruit, the fruit, la fruta. Okay, keep an eye on this. We said I'd be watching this blue zone. Do we make higher highs off the lows? That's the question. Like, I'd be asking yourself real spicy action here. Like, can you get over this? If you can get over that, then man, you should be able to come back and maybe fill that gap at 255. We'll see what happens here. Amazon, some of these names are not looking as hot, right? Making new lows. Little baby wick. Keep an eye on this. See if it has more downside. Meta, we talk about like the risk reward at this point. I mean, I hate to like slam people and just, I mean, a lot of people don't listen. They don't understand. The risk reward, when it's not in your favor, you have to be careful, right? You cannot just endlessly be bullish. And not to say that you can't long term, and if that's what you believe, go right ahead. But it's the same shit here where you get into the chop zones. And it's like, all right, well, now you're overbought. You've broken out of the channel. We talk about sometimes breaking out at steep channels can be very topish. Just keep an eye on it. 8 and 10 day held. Let's see what happens, what's in store. CRM, keep an eye on this, right? We talked about this double topping, now double bottoming. Watch the 100-day. Guggenheim seems to be, just holding around this mid 180s. That's the key. If it breaks below it, yikes. Microsoft, keep an eye on this one, right? Like this one's holding like support. If it breaks, it breaks. Keep an eye on that. NDAQ, we talked about, I think this is the easiest short long term, but you have a double top. You need follow through down. If not, this could be some sort of like cup and handle, which could it trap and go higher? Absolutely. Again, I just think the long term, you will not see the tech stocks trading, and not maybe 10 years, 15 years. I'm talking about like in the next couple of years being the leader in this exchange, catching all that volume. MicroStrategy, again, you need Bitcoin to start waking up. If not, this thing looks like dead money. Seems to be the 100 days coming. I mean, this thing is steep as shit. Maybe the 200 day at some point. Who knows? Netflix, speaking of just steepness, right? Steep. Be careful. Yeah, this feels like a common formation that you see. The big gap, you make a slightly higher high, take a couple weeks to whatever it needs to do, and then that gap at some point will get tested, right? It's like this, or it can fill. This one didn't, right? That's pretty damn steep. Well, we'll see again. I really don't trust Netflix. I just think there's endless competition ultimately coming in, and what they create. I mean, their content seems to not be jiving with a lot of people. So we'll see what happens with them, right? Just keeping on it. Roblox chopping around. I mean, this one pulled back on earnings, keeping on it. Posted this today. Love the close. Love the close. Break out and go. Let's fucking go. I mean, again, I'm not always bearish. I say certain things look bullish, some things are bearish. I mean, again, it's a probability base. This looks good. Above average volume, breaking out. Remember, this is the 30-day moving volume. Let's see what happens. Again, trust me. I mean, not trust me, but talking about this. Cybersecurity to me is the best tech bet, in my opinion. Tesla, we talked about oversold, holding 100-day, need to get over the 8 and 10-day. Next comes the downtrend. Again, personally, not really that excited about it. Insight, again, I mean, it's due to bounce. Chopping around, again, I think there's a buyout target. Talked about every major pullback. That's pretty solid. You probably could have bought the 200-day and range lows. I'm sorry I didn't identify that more clearly, but I like the 50s. But shit, if you bought it at 65, 66, looking good. HIMS, we talked about this one hitting the freaking accelerator button. Probably time to chop at worst. Keeping on it, okay? Because that feels, again, and this is what we talk about, the repeating pattern. Not to say that this has to collapse and give it all back. But if you bought this on the anticipation of an up move, you need to start taking some profits, rolling up stops. Now, if you're a long-term holder, some go, oh, I just hold forever. Okay, well, just don't forget that this does this, right? You go up, you pull back. You go up, you pull back. You go up, you pull back. Manage your positions. I hope that to God that it goes up forever. Palantir for bulls, because the shit doesn't always. Look at this, man. Just being a beast. I mean, we talked about this. Like, you cannot short this thing unless you... End of story. Change flipping stock. I mean, again, until it shows some sort of sign of weakness, let it go. McDonald's, multi-day range up there. Man, this one's a tough one. I would watch what happens when it hits the gap back at 300. DKNG, talked about this one playing the game, right? Breakout. Okay. Keep an eye on this one. Back near the highs. Sorry, new all-time highs. I'd watch how it plays at 50. Again, your past football season, we'll see. I've personally said this, and I'm on record. I think this is a big chop zone. But here's the thing, right? We're seeing the trash float. And when I say trash, I'm saying like names that are small and mid caps, in my opinion, that are now trading at their multiples and the way that they're being pushed around. Again, high short interest, get them squeezing at the end. That's one of the things that sometimes you see right before a market pullback is names with high short interest get squeezed because it gets people to start just getting incredibly bullish, right? They go, oh, we can't go down. We can't go down. We can't go down, right? Just keep an eye on it. Okay. Again, I'm not gonna make I would be bearish if it gets back under 49. But at this point, you let it run if you're a bull. I mean, congrats. Again, this is the thing about trading, right? You're never always gonna be right. Airbnb, we talked about this one popping. Look at this action, right? Keep an eye on it. I mean, inside day. This is hard. When you get inside days, it's like, well, I don't know. Need some more action. Costco, we talked about this one being overbought, hitting the 1618. Ten cuidado. Not to say this. I mean, I think this is a head and shoulders top, in my opinion. Not that the Costco can't do great things, but look where this thing's come from. It's due for the pullback. Due for the big pullback. Now, I'm not saying this is going to zero again. It's just, again, if you've had this one, please raise your stops. Find your risk. Don't be silly. Starbucks, I like the short on here, but I'd like to see it break the 8 and 10 day, and I'd like to see this candle right here because, again, high volume highs matter. Watch the 110 area. FedEx, we've talked about this one chopping around. Not a really ton to say here. This one's been, again, I like the short on this one on pops. Near term, just a sloppy mess. I don't know why he couldn't mid-test the 270s. Caterpillar, we talked about this one breaking, but having to hold. Seems to be holding 350. Look at Deere today, right? We talked about the earnings, right? Popping back. Oof. Talk about an agriculture name, and like here you go, industrials acting like tech stocks, right? Keep an eye on it. Nucor, nice pop today. Again, I like steel long term. If you bought at the back test of the range lows or channel, and that's kind of a weak sauce channel, I think you're gonna be fine. Again, it's like material names. I have no doubt long term. I'm on record. Like if you disappear, materials will be higher in time. Tech, I cannot guarantee that. Absolutely not. VALE. Chopping around, X, this one's interesting, chopping around. VALE, again, if you bought this thing in the 8s, keep it running. Arrow, made sense that this 13 area could be a bottoming zone. We talked about the volume. Got to get over the 14s, and then you can go. I don't know. I mean, your guess is as good as mine near term, right? But we like it long term. Arrow, obviously, is one to watch. CCJ needs to hold this level, seems to be holding. CF, again, we like ag names, playing the game, chopping around. Again, buy the dips if you want. Again, personally, just be careful. NTR, same thing. Be careful, right? All these names. I like ag. AA, love aluminum. Absolutely love aluminum. Aluminum. Expect big things long term. Keep an eye on it. XLF, as we talked about, right? Holding up pretty well. I mean, you can't say anything other than you son of a bitch chopping at the highs. Got some JP Morgan puts. Oh man, today's action was like not very friendly. But again, we got them for June. We'll see what happens here. They were cheap, dirt cheap. I'll let them ride. Morgan Stanley, now define my risk, right? Chopping around. Bank of America, not as pretty, right? But chopping around. Bank, Goldman, Snacks, again, holding up better than most. Keep an eye on this one, right? Because again, you can't, it's tough to trust a down move if this stuff holds up. Carry, this seems to be stuck. This is where it gets a little more difficult. XBI, we talked about these names, typically lead up. This big chop zone. Jets, this one's a chop top in my opinion, but watching the 200-day, man, I prayers to all the planes going down, man. This stuff shouldn't be happening. That's all I can say to that. XHB, again, the housing stocks. I mean, I told you, the housing index to me, housing stocks, housing in general, if you want to buy a new build, time is now. They are absolutely just giving away houses. Solar, man, looking a little like it's trying to get alive, right? We talked about Sedge due to pop. Again, wouldn't short the lows on these things, right? It doesn't make sense. ENPH, maybe they're due to bounce back up to the mid-70s. That could be a solid trade. For solar, this one has been chopping around, right? HYG, I think you got to be high out of your mind about corporate debt, but that's just me. USO, again, here we go. Like watching the zones, keep an eye on it. UNG, nice bounce today. Again, got to give natural gas credit. I mean, some stuff going on. Cold weather. KOD, look at this, man. I've talked about this like being an epic short, but man, that was all you got for bounce. Just be aware. You got some high volume down here. Again, we've talked about this is a decaying product. Like, it's great to short long term, no doubt. But I'd like to look for some bounces. XOP is stuck in between some areas. Again, this is why we talk about watching the gasoline. Watch the 200-day, especially for XOP. Valero, right? Like the gasoline typically lead up. Are they bouncing back to rip? Or these just little minor pullbacks to shred? We'll see. Keep an eye on it, right? Again, I'm not saying short material. I do not short materials, okay? CVE, we like this long term. BP, we talked about this one being an up move. You're welcome if you bought it in the 28, 29. Hot damn. Keep an eye on it. ExxonMobil, again, we like these names long term, like Oxy, like all this stuff, but just kind of trading the markets. Occidental, again, Buffett ain't going to lose. He bought more stock on this. The dude knows what he's doing. He's going to probably buy out the company and then print money from it. Or he's already printing money, but keep an eye on it. EQT, again, we talked about this one holding up pretty damn well. Again, names that you should watch. And last but not least, Flex LNG, because again, I think we'll be natural gas exporters down today. But again, with 11% dividend yield, love it. However, just be prepared, right? Could these pull back if we get peace in the Middle East? Who knows? And peace, again, in general. This is a, U.S.-based, what was that, liquefied natural gas exporter, servicer, shipper. So keep an eye on it. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Always here to help. Love you guys. Have a wonderful evening. Peace be with you.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, stop by the Discord room. A link is in the description below. Also, if you'd like to help support more free content, the PayPal link is in the description as well. I appreciate your continued support of the channel.